I've picked out today the 25th chapter of the book of Leviticus. The most interesting book in the Bible. Then the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land that I give you, in the land you shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years you shall sow your field. 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath to complete rest for the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. That which grows by itself from your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your unpruned vines, for it is a year of complete rest for the land. The Sabbath produce the land shall be food for you and for your male and female servants, and for your hired servant, and for your stranger who sojourns with you, and for your livestock and for the wild animals in your land shall all its increase be food." Now that's about the sabbatical year, but we're moving from that to what is called the Year of Jubilee. You shall count seven Sabbath weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, and the times of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be for you 49 years. Then you shall sound the horn blast on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement you shall make the sound, the horn throughout all your land. You shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, and each of you shall return to his possession, and every person shall return to his family. That 50th year will be a jubilee for you, and you shall neither sow nor reap that which grows by itself, nor gather the grapes of your unpruned vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You shall eat the produce of the field. The year of Jubilee you shall return to your property. If you sell anything to your neighbor or buy anything from your neighbor, you shall not oppress one another. According to the number of years that the Jubilee you shall pay your neighbor, and according to the number of years of crops he shall sell to you. According to the increase of years you shall increase the price, and according to the decrease of years you shall diminish the price of it. For he shall sell to you according to the number of years of crops. You shall not therefore oppress one another, but you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. Therefore you shall do all my statutes and all your decrees, and do them, and you shall dwell securely in the land. The land shall yield its fruit, and you shall eat your fill and live securely in it. If you shall say, "What shall we eat on the 7th year? If we shall not sow or gather our crops, then I will command my blessing upon you in the 60th year, 6th year, and you shall bring forth produce for 3 years. You shall sow in the 8th year, and you shall sow in the 8th year, and eat of the old crops until the 9th year, until its crops come in." Now, the next few verses, and I'm not going to read them all because it'd take a long time, is about the redemption of property. In other words, if a family has sold its property for any reason during the period of 49 years, in the 50th years, all debts are canceled. All land that belonged to any family goes back to the original owner. The way they did that was that they would take a clay urn, and they would take a papyrus or leather, and they would write on it the deal, and write their name, and it goes all the way back to the very beginning. And so then, when the Year of Jubilee came, that property always went back to its original owner, because it was a year of Jubilee, and all debts, private and public, were canceled, and everything basically just started all over again. And it's really the fairest way, and that's really the way we should do things today, but it's never going to happen. But still, that's what it was for. So they would take those papyri, or pieces of leather on which those deals had made, they would roll it, then they would put a seal on it. Then they would take another piece, if it was sold again, put a seal on it. If it was sold again, they'd put a seal on it. You can find out about this during the time of the Babylonian captivity, because Jeremiah was commanded to go back to Anathoth, and he was to redeem his family property, because what God was saying was, you're coming back, and when you come back, the land is going to belong to the one that was on the last title deed. Now, that's connected. If you want to go over to the book of Revelation, there is and of course, there's a story about it in the book of Ruth, about the kinsman redeemer, who would come and he would buy back whatever the company had sold, and he would take, the slaves would be released, and there was a person who had the right of redemption, and that was the elder of the family. And in that particular case, Boaz had to wait to get Ruth for his wife, because there was one kinsman redeemer that was closer. So he went and made a deal with the rightful kinsman redeemer, and he sold his right by changing a shoe. He sold his right to Ruth and the family redemption to Boaz. Boaz then, of course, took Ruth as his wife and took the land that belonged to Naomi's family. So that's the idea. But now in the book of Revelation, we see God holding in his hand the title deed to all of creation. And it's where it belongs, is in his hand, because even though Satan has temporary title to it, the year of Jubilee is coming. And when Jesus steps up, that's what he does. He takes those seals and begins to open them. And that he is redeeming all of creation as he's doing that by sending judgments to prove that God is the rightful owner. Now, the reason I read that to you is because there's some incredible history. In 1867, now remember, Israel has not existed now for nearly 2,000 years. So, but there are two men who come to Israel at the same time. And if you read the book of Zechariah, you will find it talking about a stranger coming to Israel. It also talks about a man with a measuring line. It was an angel, but it also represented a man with a measuring line. And of course, what that was for was to mark off Israel for redemption. All right. So those two men did not know each other. One of them was Mark Twain, who had the readership to be able to declare liberty throughout the land. The other one was a Charles. I'll miss his last name if I'm not careful, but his name was Lieutenant Charles. But anyway, he was a surveyor, and he went back, and while he was surveying, he would find things proving prior ownership for Israel. So anyway, it's interesting that was in 1867. The stranger came, published Israel's return. He said things like, for example, I see nothing but desolation. It's interesting that back in the 28th through 30th chapters of Deuteronomy, that Moses declared blessings for obedience and desolation for disobedience. And the land of Israel in 1867 was nothing but a desolate waste, because Mark Twain himself said, all I see is desolation. He said, there's not a green thing for 10 miles. There's not another human being for 10 miles. That's why it's interesting now that the Palestinians claim, oh, it's ours, you know. But the first Palestinians were Israel. They were Israelites, because a man named Hadrian got so mad back in 135 AD during the Bar Kokhba rebellion that he not only laid level the land, but he put salt on it and ran a plow over it. That's how much he hated Israel and demanded no Israeli ever come back there. Now, there's always been a little bit of a presence, but he called the land Palestine. That's the first time it was ever called Palestine, because it had a meaning in Greek, but he didn't want anything to do with Jerusalem or Israel, so he tried to blot it out completely. Sounds a little bit like some of the people we have going on today. But anyway, the Israelites were the original Palestinians, not Arabs. And most of the people that claim to be Palestinians today are from Crete, they are from Jordan, they are from Arabia, they are from many other places, but they are not Palestinians, and they're certainly not Israelites. And it's been proved, the prior claim to Israel has been proven over and over and over again. Now this all had to happen, but what I was going to tell you is that in 1867, first was Mark Twain, then was Charles, sorry, I'll get it later, but the man who was there to measure the city for the British Mandate, okay, or later, British Mandate. But then they did what they could do, and then 50 years later, to the day, the Balfour Declaration was declared in 1917, just before during the war with the Ottomans, which was World War I. So anyway, 50 years to the day. And then 50 years to the day from 1917 was what? 1967. What happened in 1967? The Six-Day War, in which Israel got back the city of Jerusalem for the first time in nearly 2,500 years. Okay? Then 50 years to the day, in 2017, there was a man named Donald J. Trump who moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, declaring Jerusalem to be the proper capital of Israel. So that's how the Year of Jubilee has effect on us. We can see prophecy coming to pass year by year by year by year by year by year by year. So that's the precision of Bible prophecy. But better to show you the precision of Bible prophecy, there was a decree made by Artaxerxes Longomanus in 445 BC. To the day, 173,880 days later, the king of Israel came riding into Israel on a donkey. And to the day, and that, interestingly enough, is the day that the sacrifice was brought in to make sure that it was fit for the sacrifice for the Passover. And that's the day Jesus rode in on April the 10th in AD 30. So the precision of Bible prophecy is beyond amazing, because God is the one who's the author. Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and God is the author of all prophecy. And he gives it to his servants, the prophets, as Peter talks about. But point being made is that 173,880 days, which is exactly 70 years. If you recall the story, the prophecy in Daniel of the 70 weeks, the 70 weeks prophecy, which is 70 times 7 years, or 449 or 469 years. There's still one week left, and that week is the year of the tribulation, and the year for Israel to be judged for her sins, and for Israel to be purged of all of her rebellion. And then after that rebellion is finished in 7 years, when at the Battle of Armageddon, there will be a judgment, Matthew chapter 25, where the nations are judged for their treatment of Christ's brethren, the Jews. Because you see, he said it would be for their treatment of his brethren, which are the Jewish people. And those are the ones who helped them during the tribulation. The ones who didn't will not go into the millennium as a nation, but they will cease to exist. So I'm just using this to show you a little bit of the precision of prophecy. You can trust the Bible. You can trust what it says, because 33% of the Bible is prophecy. Half of that prophecy is not yet fulfilled. So just as the first half of it was fulfilled to the letter, then the second half will also be fulfilled to the letter. The bottom line is Jesus is coming soon.
Amen.